years and most of my life, my job has been to wake up Uganda to the imperative of breaking the cycle of violence and reconciling our country. There are those who are easy to wake up. I assume that those of you who are here are the ones who are genuinely asleep, so you are easy to wake up. But in Uganda, we have those who are pretending to be asleep. Now, those are the most difficult to wake up. Because even when you shake them, they also assist you by shaking. Because they are actually wide awake, they're only pretending to be asleep. Even when you move their arm and you try to move their arm one way, they also help you to move their arm. So that is my toughest job, waking up the Ugandans who are pretending that all is well in our country. And you listen to them on TV, you listen to them on radio. It's something which we have got to confront. So we have to find a new method of waking up those who are pretending to be asleep on the issue of transitional justice. This is a country that has not had peaceful change of government, not even once. We have seen the internet, we have artificial intelligence, we have TikTok, we have Facebook, we have everything. The fastest cars, we even have the Entebbe Expressway, we have everything. Let me tell you, Ugandans don't stay awake because they don't have the latest version of the iPhone. They don't stay awake because they don't have a skyscraper. They stay awake wondering what happens tomorrow. For instance, what if the president of the country does not wake up tomorrow? Those are the things that keep Ugandans awake. And I'm in the best position to talk like that. Those of you who are pretending to be asleep, you may not be understanding what I'm talking about, but you may be woken up somehow. As indeed we have been woken up in 1966, we were woken up in 1971, we were woken up in 1979, we were woken up in 1985, we were woken up in 1986, but now we want to design the future. And transitional justice is critical about that. Those are the things that you are going to have to talk about. It has been my intention to be a bridge between the government and the civil society. There was a time when there was a bit of uncomfortable relationship between the government and the civil society. But the truth of the matter is, for those of you who are Ugandans, you are our civil society. We cannot expel you, and we can expel ambassadors for good reason. We can accuse them of anything, but as for you, we have to deal with you, whether you are in the country or out of the country, because you will, even if you went to exile, you will still be a Ugandan. So transitional justice is about designing institutions that can be a kind of you could call it what the synovial fluid is to the bone structure, a lubricant. Conflict is inevitable, but there must be some lubricant to mitigate the impacts of conflict. While in The Hague, I had the honor to be received by the president of the court, the International Criminal Court. I met the prosecutor, I met the registrar, I met the executive director of the Victims Trust Fund, and I also met our very own Justice Salome Balungi Bosa. I invited the prosecutor to visit Uganda and talk to the government and talk to us, because Uganda is one of the key midwives of the International Criminal Court. Of course, now Uganda may have some issues, but I declared openly that Uganda is committed to fighting impunity. and that we will always support the court and discuss whatever issues we have openly. In any case, while talking to the learned Attorney General Emeritus Fred Ruhindi, he reminded me that Dr. Katia should have mentioned a key milestone, the enactment of the law in Parliament domesticating the Rome Statute. So Uganda cannot pretend that it shouldn't listen to people from outside Uganda talking about Uganda. We have invited the world into our bedroom through that. Some of the contentious issues was about the death sentence. You know, there's no death sentence in the Rome Statute. So now we were saying those who are tried in our courts for murder, for instance, can be sentenced to death. But since we have domesticated the Rome Statute, now if we try war criminals, they are now exonerated from the death penalty. Honorable Ruhindi told me that that was the most difficult conversation he had with the President of our Republic, because it was very difficult. But the context of that time enabled him to prioritize accountability for war crimes, particularly by the LRA at that time, over reservations on the death penalty. So we have that law. When the prosecutor visits, and I believe by that time the new representative of the ICC in Uganda will have settled down. I met him also. He's Mr. Naidu. He's a South African, and I think we couldn't have gotten a better person to come and head that office here because of the experience that South Africa has had. So this really is what this conference is about. The Baganda have a saying that evirwao biera virwa. Things which take long are sooner or later forgotten. This policy is a national transitional justice policy. It may have been motivated by what happened in northern Uganda, but it is a national policy. And the transitional justice law, which is currently in draft, is about the whole of Uganda. When I arrived at the ministry, I was informed that there was even an attempt by some anxious or hysterical people who thought they may be suspects to break into an office in the Ministry of Justice. This is a very sensitive topic because it is about being told things you wouldn't want people to remind you about. For instance, if you have killed civilians, you are going to be face to face with the families of those civilians. We have had incidents, massacres in Luwero during the war by both the government forces and even the rebels. In northern Uganda, we have had atrocities committed by the LRA principally and also by the then National Resistance Army. That's why we have those so-called massacre sites, Buchoro, Namukora, and other places. Mukura, where civilians were basically microwaved in a train wagon. LRA massacres in Baralonyo, Obalanga. These are the subjects of transitional justice. I'll pause for 3 seconds so that if you don't have the stomach for this kind of conversation, you may leave. But it is my duty to lead this difficult conversation. So it is true, some people broke into the office of the Transitional Justice Working Group in an attempt to steal a copy of the bill. I don't know what illiterate thieves these are. They don't know that these days we store information in cloud. These really must be pickpockets. They are not seasoned thieves. But I'm telling you this story just to bring it home to you that this is a topic which makes people to quake. Because it doesn't matter who you are. Even if you are the president, sooner or later you must come face to face with your responsibility. That's what Nelson Mandela did. He also had to go before the Desmond Tutu Commission and also undress and say, you know, here I am. That was then, I did this, and I want to own it. Because until you own a problem, you can't solve it. And so, it is also about showing compassion. One of the best moments for me was when the president of Uganda went and addressed a rally in Amuro, 2006. And he told the people, I'm very sorry to see you the way you are. It is my responsibility to ensure that you lead normal lives as the commander-in-chief. And I'm very sorry. That sorry started a change in the thinking of the people, who at that time thought the president did not care at all about their suffering. It was an important change in vocabulary. From we shall crush them to let us talk. I'm willing to talk to anybody who is willing to talk. It was a small but very significant change. That is what transitional justice is about. So it is not really about us. All of us politicians are very ambitious. We want to occupy the biggest office available. But if you care about transitional justice, you must talk about the next generation, so that we bring an end to these unending cycles. My written speech is available and it will be distributed. But what has changed in the world brings me back to the philosopher Friedrich Nietzsche, a German philosopher. He categorized the world into three types of people using some imagery. He said you have the sheep, you have the wolf, then you have the guard dog. That makes it risky for the wolf to get to the sheep. We live in a world where might seems to be right, and morality is now on a sliding scale. If you are strong, then the wrong you do is not condemned. That's the reality of the world today. Again, back to the philosopher Nietzsche. I think it's pronounced Nietzsche. What would be the morality of the sheep? They want to graze peacefully. They don't want to be molested. And what is the morality of the wolf? They see the sheep as prey. And the morality of the guard dog is to ensure that the sheep are safe. But we live in a world where the morality of the wolf seems to be dominant. And as you know, even if all the animals in the game parks were to, by majority vote, decree that all animals should be vegetarians, until the carnivorous animals agree, that motion is impotent. That seems to be the kind of scenario in the United Nations, for instance. You have, of course, Uganda, Rwanda, Burundi, Haiti, all these other countries. There are so many. They can all raise their hands and vote for a motion. But there are those other countries that would say, no way. That ain't gonna happen. And that is it. And that is why recently during NAM, these other countries are also saying, is it possible for some of the other continents also to have a seat at the Security Council as permanent members? So we are not going to say a sweeping statement about the context of our discussion. This is the real context. So you can remember the 3 P's according to Nesh: prey, predator, protector. We live in a world where the predators are very strong and act with impunity, and where the guard dog is not strong enough because of all sorts of rules also. For instance, Rwanda is a walking distance from Uganda. We could have crossed the border with our very own army and stopped, or at least contained significantly, the killing of Tutsis. But now you have all these conventions which say sovereignty, non-interference on the internal affairs. Surely, what internal affairs were going on? The butchering of women and children? Unfortunately, that is the world in which we live. So you bring it back home. This is about a conversation with those who have a lot of power, because it is normally governments that commit atrocities. In Germany, it was the Nazis who were in power. They are the ones who kept on killing people with impunity. And of course, some people looked the other way until some guard dogs in the form of Churchill, Roosevelt, and to a certain degree, Stalin had to come in and say, no, you are not going to have your way. Of course, many Ugandans also got sucked up in that war. That's why our president is called Museveni, because he was named after the veterans of the 7th Battalion of the King's African Rifles. So, bringing it now back home, we have the Odell report, which covers the period from 1986 so back to 1962, 62 to 86. I don't know how comprehensive it is. You people in this room will advise me. But it was largely about looking into the rear view mirror, mean Obote period. Then 95, we have a constitution which established the Uganda Human Rights Commission. That leaves us with a 10-year black hole, 1986 to 1996, totally uninvestigated, unexplored. And we have got to talk about that period. And the people who are the subject of that period are definitely the people I suspect must have broken into the office at the Ministry of Justice. Now, transitional justice is about that topic of saying, actually, it is not about hanging anybody. It is only to let people know that you did it. And if you have anything to say why you did it, you can then come forward and say, this is why I did it. There may be mitigating circumstances. Many countries have done that, including South Africa. We always have bullies in the world. But there is a way way out. Now, speaking as a politician and also a student of literature, I finally take you back to Shakespeare's The Tempest. Those of you who have read The Tempest know the story of the king who was thrown out of power. Then he went to live on an island. I'm skipping the story largely. He then learned magical arts. And all through his time in exile, he was plotting revenge on those who ousted him from power. One day, his enemies were in a ship. So using magical arts, he unleashes a storm, wrecks their ship, sets it on fire, and then generally using demonic powers, puzzles them all through the island until he brings them to justice. It's a very good story. You should read it. There's even a film version. There's a moment of reckoning. That is what transitional justice is about. That's what the Ljubljana Hague Convention is about. That's what the ICC is about. The day of reckoning. Now, the best part of The Tempest is that after that reckoning,